Hello and welcome to another installment of our Indo-German Business Talk, the live monthly format where we discuss topics that are important for Indo-German business relations. The webinar is organized by the Indo-German Center for Business Excellence. I'm your host. My name is Matthias Karton. I'm also the Deputy Chairman and Executive Director of the center. The topic this month is education and economic migration. And as usual, I am joined by an esteemed panel of experts. I will introduce them in a moment, and we will have a hopefully lively discussion among the group of people here. But as always, and those people who are regular attendees of our webinar know that, we place a lot of importance on this being an interactive format, so we encourage you to ask questions, and we do that through our platform Slido. I would like to start with one that you can fill out while I introduce our panelists. And the first one is a so-called word cloud, so you can enter any word or thing that you like, and we will then be able to see what the group put in terms of suggestions. And the question is about international student mobility, which is obviously one topic that we will address today. It has many positive connotations, but are there also any negative ones? So that's an interesting way to start things off. Usually we see international student mobility as very positive, but are there also any negative things that come to your mind? So please go to slido.com now and type in what you think. While you do that, let me introduce our panelists. So we have 4 people here today, and I will introduce them in no particular order. The first one is Dr. Sarthi Acharya. Welcome. Dr. Acharya is a well-known, renowned economist with more than 4 decades of experience. He's currently a professor at the Institute for Human Development in New Delhi, and he has a very, very long career spanning academia, policymaking, and different international organizations such as UNDP, the ILO, and UNICEF. Dr. Acharya's work has immensely influenced economic policies, not only in India, but also in other countries around the world. We are very happy to have you. Welcome to our show. Next, we have Dr. Guido Geis-Töne. He is a senior economist at the German Economic Institute who specializes in family policy and migration issues. His research work intertwines demographic trends with aspects of education, work-family dynamics, migration processes, and labor market integration. Welcome also to you, Dr. Geis-Töne. Then we have Silvia Niedek. She's joining us from Bonn, where she is the regional manager for South Asia, Southeast Asia, and North America at iMove. And iMove is an initiative by the German Federal Institute for Vocational Education and Training. She has a rich background in journalism and public relations, and she's also the force behind iMove's business partnerships and global outreach. And finally, we have Dr. Vidya Yeraf-Dekar. She is the Pro-Chancellor of Symbiosis International University in Pune, India. She's a law graduate, a postgraduate in medicine, and a PhD holder in internationalization of higher education. So that's what I call a broad academic portfolio, for sure. And that makes her, a very important and influential figure in the Indian education sector. Her relentless drive to innovate and initiate has brought Symbiosis to the international spotlight. We're eager to hear more about how she did it and what she experienced along the way. Welcome, Dr. Yeraf-Dekar. Good. Before we dive into the discussion, let's return to the initial question where we asked about student mobility and asked our audience to highlight things that are maybe not just positive, but also negative. Let's see what we have here. Migrants are not easily accepted everywhere is one comment. Alienation at home, I guess, that alludes to the fact that, people change, I guess, when they're abroad for a long time. Losing connections to existing network at home, again, something similar. Leaving friends and family, yeah, that is tough, of course, especially if you're young, yeah. And high costs can lead to exclusion, yeah. So if you come from a lower cost country and you move to one that is higher cost, that may mean that your resources do not reach as far as they maybe do at home. Okay, that's already some interesting food for thought. So let's dive into this topic of student mobility. Dr. Acharya, with your vast experience from government, international organization, can you share a little bit, what's your perspective on international student mobility, particularly when it comes to India? What are the predominant trends and the long-term implications of that for the Indian economy?
Thank you. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes. Now, all right. Now, India is one of those countries, aside China, where the international out-mobility is among the highest in the world. China less, now India is significantly ahead of China. See, we have a number of important institutions which are fairly high skilled, like the IITs. One of them was actually supported by the German government in the 1950s. There are now several IITs. I am one of the products of IIT. I know that the top graduates of IITs, and IITs are public funded institutions. The top graduates from the IITs go settle abroad. Mainly, it was the United States. Now it's all over, including Germany. There are 20,000 of them, skilled workers in Germany, not from IIT, all over. But the situation is that this year alone, we've had a situation where about 120,000 people have surrendered their passports from India, and 55,000 have gone on to UK, and over 100,000 have gone to the US. Now, the problem is that if you get a subsidized education in this country, which is highly skilled STEM education, that's science, technology, medicine, and of the kind, then this country loses. Take the example, we've been trying to go up the value chain in software and in automobiles, and we are not able to do it because we just don't have the manpower, human power rather, to be correct. And I have had discussions with industrialists. For example, one, I can name him because he's no more, one Mr. Bajaj, who was a major auto manufacturer in this country. And my colleague here from Pune would know because that was headquartered in Pune. He was trying to develop a diesel engine. And he went from one institution to the other, saying that I'll give you 3 times the salary, 3 times the ongoing salary. Please join me developing a diesel engine. Now, we've been making diesel engines since the Tatas were manufacturing it with Mercedes-Benz collaboration since the 1950s. But the quality of diesel engines of the 50s is not the same as what it is today. We haven't been able to do a catch-up despite that we've had such a head start, which the Koreans have done, because the best of the people are leaving the country. And the economy is largely becoming a services-oriented country rather than that of a manufacturing orientation. So we are losing at that level. So the out-migration is pretty much high. The other key problem is that we are not having good quality teachers now. This is a new phenomenon because the teachers, I mean, the best of the people have to be teachers. The teachers are among the top in universities, the university professors. And if we don't get good quality professors in the coming years, the quality of the students coming out will not be that high. So at one level, we are kind of tapering off even in the software industry, where we have over $150 billion of industry, primarily because we can't go up the ladder unless we get a very high quality STEM education and people staying in that country. I was recently at a workshop in Princeton, and there's one professor there, Professor Meyer, who said, if you want to develop, you cannot borrow development. You cannot develop on foreign technologies and foreign knowledges. You have to develop them at home. And only when you develop them at home? Will you be able to trade with other countries, say developed countries in Europe, Germany, England, France, etc., on equal terms so that both the parties gain? You just cannot be trading good quality human power and sending them to other countries to work there. So I would say, I mean, to me, it's a kind of a mixed picture. And of course, there are many solutions to it, which I'll come in due course to you. But I think let others make their first cut before I come back again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So you're alluding to what's usually called a brain drain, a country losing talented people, either after they go through higher education or even maybe before. Let me turn this a little bit around and look at the thing from the German perspective. Guido Geis-Töne, as an expert on migration issues, what's the German position in this when it comes to economic migration, international student recruitment? Where does Germany stand? What's the position there, and where do you see the challenges from the German perspective?
To understand the German perspective, we have to go a bit back in history. For a long time, Germany was very restrictive with respect to international migration from countries outside the EU. At the same time, it had strong movements in development cooperation, and Germany had the idea to train people from abroad at the universities in the context of development cooperation, so that they went back. So till the 2010 years, we had a situation that we had relatively open university, and people from third countries could immigrate to Germany and study here, but it was really difficult to get a residence permit afterwards to stay in the country. And in the 2000s in Germany, skill shortages became more and more problem, and the political idea changed. It was mainly with the new immigration law in 2020, when the idea became that this education of people abroad at the university should also be a measure for securing skilled labor in Germany, so to keep the people in Germany. And then we changed the permits afterward was changed, but we still have these two pillars of educating people with the idea to help the home country that they go back, and now educating people to keep them here and to have more skilled labor, especially in the STEM, in STEM, but also in other areas. And if we look at India, Indian students became more and more important at the university, but at the same time, if we talk about immigration from India, we had first a time where we had many high-skilled migrants coming from India with already university degrees, and only since a few years we have both people coming with the university degrees and people coming to the university, and we say it's to a certain degree preferable if Germany also is responsible for a part of education, so it's good to have this education in Germany and not only recruiting people who have already their degrees made in India, where the Indian university were responsible for their education.
Yeah. Okay, so Germany obviously is in a different situation demographically. It needs a talented workforce. So it's working on brain gain, which is the other side of the same coin. You know, one country's brain drain, maybe another country's brain gain. But let's turn back a little bit to India. Vidya Yeravdakar, as someone involved in a prominent position in a higher education institution, my understanding is India obviously is a growing country, lots of young people entering university, entering the workforce, and the number of at least high quality higher education places has, as far as I'm understanding, not kept up. Is that correct? And what is the country, what are players like you maybe doing to alleviate that fact?
Yeah, so thank you very much for the question. And it's a very interesting topic because we had never linked internationalization or international student mobility to brain drain or migration and issues related to migration. So in India, you have more than 1,000 plus universities. It's the second largest higher education system, more than 50,000 colleges. So it's a huge, huge educational system with 40 million young students studying in these various colleges and universities. But still, there is scope for more, and there are obviously a requirement of getting foreign students to India. The numbers are dismally low. We have just about close to 50,000 international students or foreign students studying in these vast Indian universities, and more than 10 lakh Indian students actually studying outside of India. And therefore, my colleague Professor Acharya just mentioned that there is obviously a brain drain where a good talent of young people is moving out of India. But I think we also need to change some policies back home in India. And one, of course, you mentioned about the quality of higher education. We are moving into good quality educational institutions, as my colleague just mentioned about IITs. But now there are several private universities, or the private sector, I would say, the deemed to be, and the private universities that are really, really gearing up to very high levels of accreditation, very good ranking portfolio. So you see, even in the QS and Times Higher Education, a lot of Indian universities now showing up than before. Of course, not at a very high positions, but still do. Honestly, foreign students who come to India don't really look at so much at the ranking portfolios, but they do look at quality education. But more important is the affordability of education. So if you look at the Afro-Asian students who come to India, particularly from these neighboring countries to study in Indian universities, it is because Indian education is affordable. But unfortunately, there is, or I would say fortunately on one side and unfortunately on the student side, fortunately for the country, it's not ever a brain gain, because the students go back. There is nothing like a post-study work visa in India. I've been fighting for it because I feel that the number of foreign students will only increase if at least a year of post-study work visa can be given to these students. Indian government is still not acceding to this, but maybe someday it will have to. On the other side, if you look at why do Indian students go, or why is there a brain drain, is because the talent goes out because they get to work in the industry all across the world. So on one side, we're talking about providing a global human resource, but we're not ready to accept a global human resource back in India. We do have multinational companies, and we do have foreign people who are a foreign workforce, but that's at a much higher level. If you look at the way Indian students move out and get jobs outside, whether it's Australia, US, or even for that matter, some parts of Europe, you don't see foreign students from Afro-Asian countries who are more than happy, or in fact, they're hungry to work in Indian universities. So of course, some of us do have internship programs so that they get immersed in Indian universities. But this is one big gap, I would say, a challenge also to India, because that's one of the reasons why foreign students don't want to come to India and find other options like maybe Malaysia and some other neighboring countries that they can move to. Your direct question to quality education, I feel that yes, out of the 1,000 plus universities that we have, not all will be high quality, but certainly the number of quality education institutions has been increasing. And one of the parameters that you can see that is there are a lot of students from developed countries who come to India, not for degree programs or long-term programs, but certainly for short-term programs, and more certainly for industry-led experiential programs that some of us have designed for them. So I think I'll stop here and take some more questions.
Yeah, thanks for broadening the perspective, and also obviously for highlighting the fact that India is not just a source of students going abroad, but it's also a recipient receiving international students from other countries. So it's always a bit of both. So it's not just a brain drain, also a brain gain. Let me ask you a follow-up question. Recently, the Indian government made it easier for international universities to set up campuses in India. Do you think that will be a game changer? Do you think the higher education landscape in India will change? And do you think that will have an effect on Indian students going abroad?
Oh my God, this is a topic of great concern to some. For me, I take it very positively. We already have a Deakin University that has set up its campus in the Gift City in Gujarat, in the state of Gujarat. Another Australian university, which is University of Wollongong, is coming in. There is still a debate amongst Indian academia because they feel it like a brain drain. There will be a faculty drain from Indian institutions to the foreign institutions. But I would say that if you really want a level playing field and if you really want to create India as an education hub, why not? Why not have foreign universities coming in? But I'm sure most of them would want to come in through a collaborative mode and not really setting up large campuses. And there are good Indian universities which have an ecosystem to probably accept something like a micro campus of another foreign university within its university. And I think that will be really beneficial, not just for the students, I would also say for the faculty members. I mean, the kind of research impetus that some of the good foreign universities that will bring into Indian universities, if they come through a collaborative partnership mode where they can probably put up campuses like micro campuses within already existing universities in India, that would probably be a game changer and would definitely bring up the quality of education in Indian institutions.
Well, I would agree with Dr. Vidya completely that we need campuses here. The Cambridge University also offered to have a campus in India for a variety of bureaucratic reasons. I mean, things are still dragging. The thing is, when we set up a campus, it should not be for humanities and social sciences. They have to be in the STEM field. And there's got to be a net transfer of knowledge to the Indian base. Of course, people will go from here anywhere where they get the jobs. But there should also be an input of knowledge from elsewhere into this country. We should not be a net exporter of knowledge and not also getting knowledge in return. So the campuses must have that kind of a fluidity of them coming, we going, that kind of a thing. Thanks.
So far, we have been talking about higher education, but of course, there's more to education. And one very important part of it, at least in Germany, is our vocational training system, of which Germany is generally very proud of. We're being envied for it by other countries. I would like to welcome Silvia Niedeck and ask her to maybe first explain to, in particular, our non-German audience, very briefly, what the vocational system in Germany is and what maybe makes it special vis-a-vis other countries. And then tell us a little bit what role vocational training can play when we talk about international mobility, economic migration.
Okay, thank you very much, Matthias. Yes, we are talking about the dual system of vocational education and training in Germany. And the speciality, if you want, of this system is that it is very practice oriented. So young people who want to start their apprenticeship, they need an apprenticeship contract with a company, and 70% of their training is delivered in the companies, and only 30% is delivered in vocational schools. So the practice part is very much in the focus, and then there's also some theoretical knowledge also delivered. And also here in Germany, the employers and the employee side, the unions, they work together to really facilitate apprenticeships for all occupations. And this is a very interesting process because they're working on it together. We in Germany, we see a great potential for workforce mobility from India to Germany, actually. We also see that the exchange of students and young researchers has skyrocketed over the past years. The number of Indian students enrolled at German universities has risen to over 33,000 and ranks second after China in the list of countries with the largest number of overseas students in Germany. But we do not see so many people who come here to work as skilled labor from India, and hardly any to become apprentices in industry, in the skilled crafts, in the hospitality sector, in the healthcare sector, and so on, you name it. The number of visa for students is still 10 times as high as the one for apprentices. But the skilled craft sector, for example, alone is complaining about the current lack of 250,000 skilled employees in Germany. In the hospitality sector, the number is 65,000. And the vast majority of these jobs is not for university graduates, but for people who have completed an apprenticeship. Now, the German government therefore campaigns for recruiting skilled labor in so-called focus countries. And in this regard, many hopes are placed on India, which is now the most populous country in the world, of course. And also the focus of my organization, which is the Federal Institute for Vocational Education and Training. Our focus is on skilled labor migration, and very specifically the migration of future apprentices, because we believe that an apprenticeship in Germany is one of the most sustainable models of skill development, really. It is an opportunity to attain a qualification of international reputation while already earning a financial compensation during the training period, unlike if you are a student. Integration into the job market in Germany can be easily facilitated if an apprenticeship was completed, and even for students who cannot or do not want to continue with their university studies, an apprenticeship in Germany can be a very good alternative. And let me please also add regarding brain drain and brain gain, because this was already mentioned several times. An apprenticeship in Germany counteracts the concern for brain drain in home countries, because training and qualification efforts are transferred to Germany. And on their return to their home countries, so in case of like a circular migration, skilled labor would then be a direct brain gain for their home countries. They return with a vocational qualification of recognized international reputation. They can contribute their competencies and their networking contacts to economic development processes in their home countries, and as entrepreneurs, even generate new jobs. So the practice-oriented vocational education and training, which is a very successful training model here in Germany, could also have an effect on education and training models in home countries, and thus help modernize the training system as a whole and make it more competitive on an international scale. And I would also like to mention that there are training programs in place already to train people for the German labor market, but at the same time for their local and regional labor markets. So based on skills partnerships between Germany and partner countries, young people receive some basic vocational training with integrated German language training in their home country. And afterwards, they can decide if they want to continue with their training in Germany or stay in India, for example. And this is a direct investment in the training and certification system of the home countries. So the benefit for Germany, of course, is that the training and the certification are clearly geared towards having a direct connect to potential subsequent training in Germany. Yeah.
Thank you, Silvia Niedek. Dr. Acharya, you talked about the brain drain and the fact that many, in your opinion, too many highly skilled Indians leave their country and work elsewhere. At the same time, I understand that given the large number of young people entering the workforce, even with the very healthy growth rates that the Indian economy is experiencing right now, it is not able to absorb all those young people who want to enter the job market every year. Would that be a solution that could be the famous win-win situation for both countries? What do you think?
Well, let me put it this way. Yes, we have a very large population base. Fortunately, we heard a statement in the parliament today that we are yet not the largest population country in the world. It's still short of, this afternoon I had heard it, it's still short of 140 or 1400 billion, but that's a minor side talk. You see, there is huge amount of heterogeneity in India. So on the one hand, you would have people who would have markets not only in India, but all over the world, and you will find United States CEOs, etc., and of Indian origin, people are there. But at the other end, we have a huge number of colleges, as my colleague Vidya had said, where the quality is not ensured. And there is this organization called NESCOM. NESCOM is a computer, some kind of a union. which it's an association of companies, which says that about more than 60% of Indian engineers are not fit for a modern market. So unless the quality increases, for which the government of India will have to increase its own expenditure on education as well as research and development. And unless that happens, I mean, we just cannot change the situation and be on low value added and high unemployment scene. So in this regard, I would like to say, other than the government of India increasing its education and research and development budget well beyond 3-4%, at least on research and development, it could easily go up from 0.7 to something like 3 or 4%. But if it does that, there's a possibility of developing research and development centers in India with foreign countries. For example, Germany, which is a very high technology country, can set up, let's say, diesel workshops in India to develop very highly efficient engines. And since mechanical technology is something which is really the hallmark of German technology, they can have research and development centers in places like Pune, Hyderabad, Bangalore, where Indian and German scientists can work together. But then the thing is, Germans will come only if there is a fair amount of commitment from the government of India to fund these centers. So I think unless that happens, we will have a situation where there would be unemployment and the best people will be leaving, and we have to find a solution to it through better reallocation of our own resources.
I'd like to get back to our audience and basically put that question up for a vote. Is a student's decision to stay in their destination country, so if they go abroad, to stay in their destination country after graduating, is that an advantage or is it a disadvantage for their home country? So the question that we've been discussing here a little bit, is it a disadvantage or is it an advantage for their home country? Please give us your responses, and we'll wait for a moment, give you some time, and then we'll see what comes up. Okay, so far we have a unanimous picture. People are supporting Sarathi Acharya's position that we need or countries need to manage those things by providing more opportunities probably at home. Okay.
Can I just have a different opinion here?
Yes, please. Yeah, I appreciate it. Go ahead.
I think that you could have added a word permanently stay, because if you just go there and stay for a while and come back, I think you will probably gain more knowledge, gain more expertise, and bring that expertise back to your home country, to serve your home country. And many Indians are now doing that. If you see, the population that lived outside and worked outside, now many of them want to come back and contribute to the home country. And we see that at various levels. There are young people who go abroad for maybe a couple of years and want to come back. And then there are senior people who have already gained experience, gained enough money, supported their families and want to come back and contribute. And therefore, I think it also means that it's not staying permanently, but staying for a while and then coming back and serving your home countries.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. A bit more balanced position.
Yeah, there's one more thing I'd like to add here. I think India needs to revisit its salary structures. In fact, the scientists in India are paid rather poorly compared to what they should be paid. In fact, there are professions which are in general administration, which are the best paid in this country, unfortunately. And then there are people in management. So what happens is the best trained scientists, engineers, get into management immediately after they get into, they pass out from engineering colleges. So the technology is lost and the marketing and sales and personnel take over. So that's really a disadvantage. So really what we need to do is revisit the salary structure so that a scientist stays a scientist and does not become a manager or something else.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's interesting. And if I may add to what Vidya just said, is that obviously we're talking about the macro level here in aggregate, but we should not forget, I would say that underneath there are many, many individual decisions that are driven by so many factors, and obviously also people's personal liberties to, basically decide their own fate and their own life. And these things also change, right? I think we see this at our university here in Frankfurt, but I guess, it happens everywhere that also students' plans change, right? They may come for 1 or 2 semesters and then may end up staying for much longer, or vice versa. So I think these factors are also driven obviously by individual choices, and sometimes I think it's difficult to discuss on the macro level to what extent you should limit those options, because at the end of the day, it is people's livelihoods and people's happiness. I had Sylvia, I think, who wanted to add something. Yes, please.
Yes, I just very briefly, we had some like non-representative surveys among international participants of training measures here in Germany, and they said that basically they would really like to transfer some of their knowledge, which they have acquired in Germany, and also become a multiplier for their country. But I think Vidya said it already. To a certain extent, they would like to do it, but not on a constant basis, basically. That means that they would like to return maybe like for 3 months or so to train others, or to transfer their know-how by virtual means, but not necessarily is there a willingness to return permanently. And this has to be taken into consideration, of course. Mm-hmm.
Are you involved, or can you maybe shed some light on attempts to set up something like a dual vocational system in other countries such as India?
Well, it's not so easy to set up a complete dual system in another country, because our system here in Germany has grown for so long. What we actually do is we consult with other countries who would like to take up maybe some modules or some parts or some motives of the dual system into their training system. And of course, we are also in talks with India for a long time. Actually, I'm at the moment in Berlin at the session of the so-called Indo-German Joint Working Group on Vocational Education and Training, which is headed actually the Indian delegation by a joint secretary of the Indian Ministry for Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. And so we are already cooperating for a couple of years to reform and modernize all the training system in India. Mm-hmm.
Vito, you are researching demographic trends, of course. From your perspective, how does this work? Do people tend to stay in the country that they move to temporarily, forever? Do they want to go back? Are there some trends that you can observe, or is it basically all down to very individual choices? What is your experience there from the research perspective?
Well, it's mostly an individual choice. It has to do with many things, especially with partnerships, which many people do at the university. So it's many things, but we have a tendency that more people stay in Germany, and that has something to do with the changed environment. So Germany has more skill shortages. It's easier to get long-term permits after study. So we have an increased number in people staying, but it's many factors. And as you said, we have people who plan to stay who go back. We have people who plan to go back who stay. So you haven't this clear picture at this point.
So can I come in for a minute?
Yes, please. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Just to react to Sylvia's comments, it will be really nice, Sylvia, if the government, an organization like yours can help some of the Indian institutions. In India, unfortunately, the apprenticeship program hasn't really taken off so well. Though, of course, there are a lot of skill development centers, universities that are coming up. In fact, Symbiosis itself has a skill development center, and we'll be happy. But still, in India, getting a degree, even if it is not a skill-based, even if it's just a humanities Bachelor in Arts degree, is considered to be a little higher status degree than a bachelor's in vocational education, So my colleague, Professor Acharya, will agree with me that a BVoc is not something which gets the same status as maybe a Bachelor in Arts or a Bachelor in Commerce, no matter even if the BVoc is giving you a better job, but a degree and a status does still matter to Indian families. And I think we need to break that and bring in the skill development. And the national education policy has certainly looked at all these components of how to bring in skill education within the conventional education system. And all of us are now transforming our education system to the new education policy that was launched 2 years ago. But I'm sure governments, especially the German government, can be definitely of help to all of us here in India.
I agree, Vidya. Thank you.
Sylvia, and then Dr. Acharya.
I just wanted to say that I completely agree with what you, Vidya, have just said. It's just all these things we are working on that, and also the bad reputation of vocational training compared to academic careers, for example, because we really advocate the importance of vocational training, and it has a good standing here in Germany, and I think it could have a better standing in many other countries. We are working on that.
Question from the audience, and then we'll get to the final round. So the question is, does the projected growth of the Indian economy mean more international students from America, England, and Germany to India in the future? Okay, that seems to be a question maybe to Vidya Yeravdekar. Do you expect more international students joining Symbiosis, for example, and other institutions in India?
Yes, so as I said, in India, you would get more international students from the developing of the emerging world countries, not really the US, UK, and the Europe. Though, of course, we see a lot of students coming in for short-term programs, coming in to do studies in Indian knowledge systems, typically yoga, Ayurveda. You know, many of them come to a medical school to be observers in the hospital because they don't get to see, you know, patients of the kind of patient that Indian hospitals would, you know, give them to see. So there are certain areas for which US, UK, and European students would want to come for typically short-term programs, maybe a semester abroad program. But otherwise, you know, the source countries for us are certainly the Afro-Asian countries.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for that answer. And now let's get to the final round with a question that I would like to pose to all our panelists. If you had one policy change that you would like to propose to increase educational and economic ties between India and Germany, what would that be? So one policy change that would enhance economic and educational ties between India and Germany. And maybe let's start with Sylvia Niedig.
Oh, well, that is a very hard question, actually. I think it would be great if the ties become so close that preparation and bridging courses for the preparation of skilled labor and future apprentices who wish to come to Germany could also be applied in India at a very early stage, so that, for example, at ITIs or at other institutions, at universities, there could be, as I said, these bridging courses, this kind of pre-qualification, which makes it then a lot easier for those who want to come to integrate themselves here in companies, in the German society. That would help a lot, I think.
Okay, thank you. And I understand it is a difficult question. Vito, what would you wish for?
I would say the main thing would to improve the German education system in the English language. We have still the problem in international cooperation that the English skills of many Germans aren't that good. Everything else will work. We have more people coming from India to Germany, so we get these relations. We have relations on between the two countries on a political level, especially with respect to the changed international system. We need more economic cooperation with India. So I would say everything would work. The most important thing is to understand each other, and for this, the joint language in English is the most necessary thing.
Yes, a pledge for more internationalization at German institutions. Let's now move to our two Indian panelists. Sarthi, what would you hope for in terms of policy changes to enhance educational integration between India and Germany?
To me, the most fundamental thing is to have joint collaborative research and development centers in top Indian universities with German expertise on a long-term 5-year, 10-year basis, which would be which would be on the cutting edge of technology, be it in IT or let's say mechanical engineering or electrical engineering, any of these areas. We must have cutting edge technology centers where Indians and Germans work together to develop global world-class technologies.
Thank you. And then finally, we have Vidya. What is your suggestion or your wish?
Yeah, so my wish would be that if more German industry would connect with, some policy changes in Germany, where we can actually have very strong industry connects with of the German industry with Indian institutions, because I absolutely agree with Professor Acharya. I was also going to say the same thing, that if we can have R&D centers of German industries on the Indian university soils, that way, because India has a great talent, the minds of young Indian people, they're excellent, they're very brainy, they're very talented. I think it just needs an ecosystem to nurture the talent. And therefore, I think the providing of that ecosystem by German industry would play a big role. And we've seen this happening in some of the in the IITs in India, but maybe some of the good universities in the private sector can also be chosen for such initiatives.
Good, excellent. Well, thank you very much for this lively discussion. And I think we've covered a lot of perspectives of this very, very important topic, education, which I think will shape the future of our countries. And it's also very close, obviously, to my heart as someone working at a higher education institution. And I guess that passion is something that I share with my fellow panelists here today. I'm very happy that we managed to look at the issue from very different perspectives, economically, the perspective of the individual student. We talked about higher education, we talked about vocational training, we talked about research. So I think that was a very broad but still very insightful discussion. So thank you very much to the 4 panelists. Thank you very much also, of course, to our audience for their questions, for participating in the polls. And I hope that you will join us again next week when we have another topic on the Indo-German Business Talk. Until then, thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.